Hey, I'm Sarah Mitchell, and at 24, I never thought my college graduation would feel like such a personal victory. Standing next to my sister Chloe in our caps and gowns should have been pure joy, but it carried the weight of years of being overlooked. I can still hear my parents' words, sharp as ever. She deserved it, but you didn't. That night, when they chose to invest only in Chloe's future, it broke something in me. Before I share what left them speechless at graduation, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Hit that like button if you've ever had to fight harder for what others got easily. The weeks after graduation were a whirlwind. I moved into a new apartment near Alexander Global Consulting's offices, using part of my competition winnings for the deposit. My business was still going strong, managed by my student team, who I'd made sure got fair wages and flexible hours. I started my consulting job, pulling $90,000 a year plus bonuses, more than Dad made, which felt like its own quiet win. I used some of my savings to set up the First Generation Achievement Scholarship at Westfield for students like me, juggling jobs and dreams. When I met the first recipient, a girl working 2 jobs while raising her siblings, I saw myself in her, but now she'd have the support I didn't. My parents reached out 2 weeks after graduation, asking for a lunch meeting at a neutral restaurant. It was awkward, Mom fidgeting with her napkin, Dad's usual confidence gone. "We've been thinking," Mom started, "about the choices we made, the assumptions we had." Dad added, "We misjudged you, Sarah." It was the closest they'd come to an apology, but it felt small after everything. I looked at them and said, "I'm open to a new relationship, but it has to be real. You need to own what you did, not just a misunderstanding, but favoritism that hurt me." They nodded, Mom's eyes tearing up, and I could tell it wasn't easy for them. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start, on my terms. Chloe and I were different now. We'd started having weekly sister dinners, talking about everything. Her new job at a nonprofit focused on educational equity, inspired by what she'd learned about my struggles. One weekend at Grandma Margaret's lake house, she gave me a silver bracelet, something her grandmother had given her when she finished school. "It's for a woman who knows her worth comes from within," she said, fastening it on my wrist. "Your journey was harder than it should have been, Sarah, but it made you extraordinary." I teared up, feeling the weight of her belief in me, the same belief that had carried me through. Chloe joined us, and we spent the weekend laughing, cooking, feeling like a real family. Not the one I was born into, but the one I'd chosen. At the scholarship ceremony that fall, Mom and Dad showed up, quieter than usual. I gave a speech about creating ladders for others to climb, and I saw something new in their eyes. Not just regret, but pride. Real pride. Dad said afterward, "You've created something meaningful, Sarah." Mom added, "You turned your pain into purpose. That's rare." It mattered, a little, but I didn't need their validation anymore. I'd found it in myself, in Margaret's fierce love, in Chloe's newfound respect, in Mia's unwavering support, in every professor who'd seen my potential. A year later, hiking with Chloe, she asked if I'd ever fully forgive them. I thought about it, looking out over the hills, and said, forgiveness isn't one moment. It's letting go of wishing the past was different. I'll never forget being told I wasn't worth investing in, but I'm working on not letting it define me. She nodded, saying, "Their biggest loss was not knowing you all those years." That hit me, but it also freed me. My worth wasn't tied to their mistakes. It never was. I'd built a life, business, career, family, that proved it. The real triumph wasn't proving them wrong, it was knowing I'd always been enough no matter who couldn't see it. Graduation morning felt like the world was holding its breath, bright and clear, like it was cheering me on. I woke up early, too wired to sleep, and slipped into the new dress I'd splurged on, fastening the stole Grandma Margaret gave me, embroidered with "Diamonds are made under pressure." It felt like armor, a reminder of everything I'd fought through. Mia insisted on driving me to campus, joking, "No bus for the star of the show today." The campus was buzzing, families in their Sunday best, graduates in black robes like a flock of elegant crows. I found Chloe in the robing area, her blonde curls peeking out from her cap. She hugged me tight, saying, "Can you believe we made it? I barely scraped by, but you conquered it." Her words hit me, not because I needed her approval, but because I could feel how far we'd come. We lined up to the processional, and as we marched into the auditorium, I saw Mom and Dad in the front rows, Dad in his fancy suit, Mom in a floral dress that screamed "big day."
Their eyes followed Chloe, proud as ever, while Grandma Margaret's gaze locked on me, her nod saying everything. The ceremony dragged, speeches about potential and responsibility, but I was too busy rehearsing my speech in my head, trying to calm the butterflies. When the degrees were conferred, I crossed the stage, hearing Margaret's whistle cut through the applause. Chloe gave me a thumbs up as we passed each other. Then came the moment. The president, Dr. Harlow, stepped up and said, "Before we conclude, we have special recognitions. First, I invite Sarah Mitchell to deliver the student address." I walked to the podium, heart pounding, and saw my parents' faces, confused, like they hadn't expected me to be up there. I took a deep breath and started. 4 years ago, I came to Westfield with nothing but determination and a belief that education should be earned. I worked 30 hours a week, built a business, and graduated with highest honors. The real lesson wasn't in textbooks. It was learning that others' limitations don't define you. I didn't name my parents, but I spoke to that hurt, the power of proving doubters wrong. The applause was loud, warm, and I felt it wrap around me. Then, Dr. Harlow returned, and everything changed. Sarah Mitchell is this year's valedictorian, graduating with a 4.0 while building a six-figure business. She won the National Collegiate Business Innovation Competition, bringing unprecedented recognition to Westfield. And she did it all while self-financing her education, without family support. The crowd gasped, then clapped harder. He went on. In honor of her journey, we're establishing the Sarah Mitchell Resilience Scholarship for students overcoming obstacles. My parents' faces went pale, like they'd been slapped. The audience stood, cheering, and I saw Chloe crying, clapping wildly, while Grandma Margaret's smile could have lit the room. Dr. Harlow added, "Sarah has been offered a position at Alexander Global Consulting, and she'll be featured in Business Innovation magazine." It was too much. Validation, vindication, all at once. As I stepped down, Chloe grabbed my hand, whispering, "They were so wrong about you." At the reception afterward, professors, classmates, and industry folks swarmed me, sharing stories of how I'd inspired them. Mom and Dad approached later, awkward, Dad saying, "Quite a surprise, Sarah. You've been holding out on us." I looked him in the eye, calm, and said, "I've been exactly who I always was. You just weren't looking." Chloe stepped up, saying, "Everyone's talking about Sarah's speech. Imagine what she could have done with the support I had." Mom flinched, and for the first time, I saw regret in her eyes. I didn't need it, though. I had Margaret, Chloe, Mia, my professors, the family I'd built. That was my real victory. Senior year felt like everything was coming together, like all those late nights and sacrifices were finally paying off. My digital marketing agency had grown to 15 clients, and I'd hired 4 student workers, turning my scrappy side hustle into a real business. A local entrepreneurship magazine ran a feature on me, complete with a photo of me in my tiny apartment office, surrounded by Post-it notes and coffee cups. I sent a copy to Grandma Margaret, who called me, sobbing, "I always knew you were extraordinary, Sarah." My parents? They didn't mention it. Not a word. That didn't surprise me anymore, but it still stung, like a bruise you forget about until you press it. In October, Professor Harper called me into her office with a brochure for the National Collegiate Business Innovation Competition. "Your agency's focus on rural small businesses could win this," she said. "The prize is $50,000 and national exposure." I spent weeks refining my business plan, practicing my pitch until I could do it in my sleep. When I made it to the final round in April, I poured everything into it. Every lesson from my classes, every trick I'd learned from scraping by. Standing in front of those judges, I wasn't just pitching a business. I was telling my story, how I'd turned constraints into strengths. When they called my name as the winner, I felt this rush, like I'd crossed a finish line I'd been running toward for years. The university newspapers splashed my win across the front page, and I sent another copy to Margaret, who framed it. My parents still didn't call. Around the same time, Dean Patricia Evans asked me to her office. "Your journey's remarkable, Sarah," she said. "From self-financing your education to building a business while graduating with honors. You're the kind of story we want to highlight." She asked me to give the student address at graduation, and when I said yes, she winked, saying, "Be ready for a little extra spotlight." I didn't know what she meant, but I could feel something big coming. Meanwhile, Chloe was changing. She'd started declining Mom and Dad's extravagant gifts, saying she wanted to stand on her own, like me. One night she said, "Everyone's talking about you, Sarah. Your business, your awards. I'm so proud to be your sister." It was the first time I felt like she really saw me, not as the sister she was compared to, but as someone she admired. She even called out Mom and Dad's favoritism in front of relatives, which made things tense but felt like a small victory. As graduation neared, I was balancing my business, classes, and preparing my speech. I wanted it to be about resilience, about proving you could redefine success no matter who doubted you. I kept thinking about that night when my parents said I wasn't worth investing in, how it had broken me but also built me. Every A, every client, every award was proof they were wrong, not just about me, but about what it means to be valuable. I was nervous, sure, but I was ready. I earned this moment, and no one could take it away.
By my sophomore year, I was starting to find my footing, even if it felt like walking a tightrope. I was still working 30 hours a week, still studying until my eyes burned, but I was getting better at it. Juggling, surviving, thriving. That's when I started to dream bigger. In my marketing and digital media classes, I learned about online businesses. And with Professor Harper's research on small business resilience, I saw a gap I could fill. I started a virtual assistant service for local businesses, using skills I'd picked up from school and my own hustle. I built a simple website late at night, created service packages based on what I'd learned, and suddenly I had clients. Small shops needing help with emails, social media, stuff they didn't have time for. It wasn't much at first, but it felt like mine, something I'd made from nothing. Then disaster hit. The coffee shop cut everyone's hours because of a seasonal slowdown, and my budget, already stretched thin, collapsed. Rent was due, tuition was looming, and I felt panic creeping in, like I was one bad day from losing everything. I remembered Miss Winter's promise and booked an emergency meeting at the financial aid office. She didn't sugarcoat it. "This is a tough spot, Sarah, but you qualify for an emergency grant." Then she dropped a bombshell. Professor Harper had recommended me for a research assistant job in the business department. It paid better than the coffee shop, looked great on a resume, and had flexible hours. I took it without hesitation, and suddenly I could breathe again. That job was a game changer. Working with Professor Harper, I dug into data on how small businesses survive tough times, and it felt like I was studying my own life. She'd ask me questions, and I'd share insights from my own budgeting tricks, my scrappy little business. One day, she said, "Have you thought about entrepreneurship, Sarah? Your perspective on resource constraints is sophisticated." That planted a seed. Maybe I wasn't just surviving, maybe I was building something real. Around this time, something else shifted. Chloe showed up at my apartment one night, teary-eyed, clutching her laptop and a stack of research papers. "I'm failing my thesis seminar," she said, her voice breaking. "My professor says my methodology's all wrong and I might not graduate." I could have walked away. Part of me wanted to, remembering all the times she got everything I didn't. But I saw her, really saw her, scared and lost. "Come in," I said. We spent hours going over her research, and I realized I'd learned skills she hadn't. Rigorous methods from my work with Professor Harper, time management from my crazy schedule. Those late-night study sessions became a thing, and for the first time, we talked, really talked. "How do you do it?" she asked one night. "Your business, perfect grades, everything. I can barely keep up with just school." I told her about my 60-hour weeks, skipping meals to save cash, the constant math in my head to make ends meet. Her eyes widened, like she was seeing me for the first time. "I had no idea," she whispered. "Mom and Dad always said you were fine." That hurt, but it also opened a door. Chloe started to get it, how uneven things had been, and slowly we started building something new. Not just sisters, but friends. My business kept growing, enough to let me quit the bookstore job, and with the research gig and loans, I was finding a shaky kind of stability. I wasn't just the girl scraping by anymore. I was Sarah, the entrepreneur, the one professors noticed, the one classmates asked for advice. It felt good.
like I was finally stepping out of Chloe's shadow, not because I needed to beat her, but because I was carving my own path. My first year at Westfield hit me like a freight train. While Chloe moved into a fancy dorm, her tuition and new laptop paid for by mom and dad, I was hauling secondhand suitcases into a rundown apartment 45 minutes from campus, sharing it with 3 strangers. The place had peeling paint, leaky pipes, and walls so thin I could hear the neighbors arguing. My decade-old Honda groaned the whole drive, and nobody checked if it was safe for the trip. I felt alone that first night, lying on a thin mattress, traffic noise seeping in, wondering if I'd made a huge mistake. But then my phone lit up with a text from Grandma Margaret. "Diamonds are made under pressure, Sarah. You're already shining." I wiped my tears and got to work, mapping out a schedule that left no room for error. My days started at 5 a.m., 2 hours of studying before rushing to open the coffee shop, then classes, then the bookstore job until midnight. I did readings on the bus, wrote papers during lunch breaks, recorded lectures to listen to while cleaning coffee machines. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, maybe 4 hours if I was lucky. Chloe's life was different. Sorority parties, study abroad info sessions, weekends home with mom's cooking. I saw it on her social media, those carefree posts that made my stomach twist. Not out of jealousy exactly, but because it reminded me how uneven this all was. Still, something unexpected happened. I was good at school, really good. My business classes weren't just manageable, I was acing them. All those years of budgeting my own life, scraping by, gave me a perspective my classmates didn't have. Professor Elizabeth Harper stopped me after a class, saying, "Your analysis of that case study was exceptional, Sarah. You've got a maturity most students don't." Her words were like a spark, lighting up something inside me. I wasn't just surviving, I was standing out. My roommate Mia noticed how I was running myself into the ground. One night I came home exhausted and there was a Tupperware of lasagna with my name on it. "You can't keep this up," she said, setting a cup of tea in front of me. I told her everything, my parents, the loans, the pressure, and she just listened, then said, "That's beyond unfair. From now on, I'm your college family." Mia became my rock, editing my papers when I was too tired to see straight, making flashcards for exams, and even cooking extra so I wouldn't skip meals to save money. "Family takes care of each other," she'd say, refusing my offers to pay her back. The financial aid office became my second home. Ms. Winters, the assistant director, took me under her wing after hearing my story, promising to help if things got overwhelming. Then, right before classes started, Mrs. Chen called with a surprise, a $1,000 scholarship from my high school teachers who'd pooled their own money because they believed in me. I sat there, staring at my budget spreadsheet, feeling this tiny shift, like maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. That small act of kindness, those teachers seeing me when my own parents didn't, gave me the courage to keep going. Freshman year was brutal, no question, but it was also when I started to see who I could be. I wasn't just the girl my parents overlooked. I was Sarah, the one who could handle anything, work, school, bills, all of it, and still come out on top. Every A on a paper, every nod from a professor felt like proof I was building something they couldn't ignore, even if they weren't watching yet.
The turning point came during Sarah's senior year of high school, when both she and Chloe, who had skipped a grade, were accepted to Westfield University, a prestigious institution known for its business and political science programs. Sarah's excitement was palpable as she announced her acceptance to the business school at dinner. David barely looked up, but when Chloe burst in with her own acceptance to the political science program, the family erupted in celebration. Champagne for the adults, sparkling cider for the girls. Sarah's achievement was overshadowed. 2 weeks later, at a rare family dinner, David announced they had saved for Chloe's tuition, believing her academic promise justified the investment. When Sarah asked about her own tuition, her parents exchanged uncomfortable glances.
"We only have enough for one," David said. "Lily's path will yield better returns." Laura added, "You're independent, Sarah. You can take out loans or start at community college." The words, "She deserved it, but you didn't," seared into Sarah's memory, shattering the last threads of familial trust. Devastated, Sarah drove to Margaret's lake house, pouring out her pain. Margaret, fierce and unwavering, declared, "Your parents are wrong, Sarah. You have unbreakable determination. Promise me you'll go to Westfield anyway." That night, Sarah resolved to attend Westfield, financing her education through scholarships, loans, and work. She spent weeks applying for aid, supported by her guidance counselor, Mrs. Chen, and secured enough funding for her first year, including a loan co-signed by Margaret. The betrayal had broken her, but it also ignited a fire to prove her worth. Growing up in our little two-story house with the white picket fence in suburban Michigan, you'd think my childhood was picture perfect. From the outside, it was. Family photos with forced smiles, a tidy lawn, and parents who seemed to have it all together. My dad, David, was an accountant, always crunching numbers. And my mom, Laura, taught high school English, grading papers late into the night. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. The kind of middle-class family that didn't worry about money. Except in our house, there was always this unspoken divide, and I felt it from the time I could remember. My sister, Chloe, 2 years younger, but somehow always miles ahead in my parents' eyes, was the golden child, with her perfect blonde curls, straight-A report cards, and that charm that made everyone love her. She was their pride and joy. Me? I was Sarah, the afterthought. The one who got socks and discount craft kits on Christmas morning, while Chloe unwrapped the latest toys or gadgets. I'd ask Mom why, and she'd say, "Chloe needs more encouragement for her talents, honey." Even at 8, I knew that wasn't fair, but I learned to swallow the sting, to push down the hurt and keep going. School events made it worse. Dad and Mom would take days off to help Chloe with her science fair projects, building these elaborate displays that won her ribbons, while my art exhibitions got a quick visit from Mom on her lunch break, if I was lucky. "Art's just a hobby, Sarah," Dad would say, his voice flat, like my dreams didn't matter. "It won't get you anywhere." Those words stuck, like a splinter I couldn't pull out. But there was one person who saw me, really saw me. My grandma, Margaret. Summers at her lake house were my escape. We'd sit for hours, me sketching the water and trees, her telling me, "You see the world differently, Sarah. Don't let anyone dim that light." Her words were like a warm blanket, wrapping me up when the world felt cold. In her little library, I found books about entrepreneurs who started with nothing, people who turned obstacles into stepping stones. I'd read them under the lamplight, dreaming of a day I'd prove I was worth something, that I wasn't just the other daughter. By high school, I'd built a kind of armor, resilience born out of necessity. I joined every business club, threw myself into math and economics, and found I was good at it. Really good. When I won a regional business plan competition as a sophomore, my economics teacher, Mr. Rivera, called my parents to brag about me. I overheard Mom on the phone saying, "That's nice," before asking me to help Chloe with her history project. It was like my win didn't even register. Meanwhile, Chloe's debate team victories got full-blown celebrations, special dinners, the works. I'd sit there, smiling, pretending it didn't hurt, but inside I was screaming. Why couldn't they see me? Why was I always less? Grandma Margaret was my lifeline, the one who kept me going. She'd tell me stories of her own struggles, how she'd fought to be seen in a world that didn't always value women like her. "You're stronger than you know," she'd say, her hands clasping mine. Those summers gave me something to hold on to, a spark that kept me dreaming of a future where I'd show them all, my parents, the doubters, even myself, that I was enough.
The deepest lesson from my journey is that your worth isn't defined by others' recognition. It lives within you, shaped by your resilience and belief in yourself. Growing up, I felt invisible, told I wasn't worth investing in, but those painful moments taught me to find strength in adversity. Every late night, every sacrifice, every time I pushed forward despite doubt, I was proving something to myself, not just to those who underestimated me. Life can be unfair. People, even those closest to you, might overlook your potential or measure you against someone else's light. But their limited vision doesn't dim who you are. You don't need permission or applause to shine. You just need the courage to keep going, to build your own path, and to trust that your value is intrinsic. My story isn't about revenge. It's about discovering that the only approval that truly matters is your own. When you embrace that, you can turn pain into purpose, creating something meaningful not just for yourself, but for others who feel unseen. It's a quiet kind of power, one that grows from within, and it's available to anyone willing to keep moving forward, no matter the odds. I hope my journey inspires you to see your own strength, to know that you're enough, even when the world doesn't see it yet. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. What challenges have you overcome, and what content would you like to see next? If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to join me for more stories of rising above. Wishing you all the courage to shine in your own way.